Hello again, and welcome back to part 3 of my advanced Google Docs videos. In this one, I am going to, of course, continue to talk about tables, but I am also going to now include images in them and drawings as well, and I'm going to talk about why that's useful. So to go back to the table we made in in video 1, let's say I wanted to add an image, okay? One of the things I strongly suggest, especially if you have tables on your document, is to put an image in a table. It's certainly possible to just insert an image anywhere on your page, but if you have tables, I would just make a column in its own, or I should say it owns a cell just for an image. It'll make your life a lot easier. Google Docs is not as flexible when it comes to images as it is as Microsoft Word was. And so if you're, again, used to using Microsoft Word and used to all that flexibility with moving images and all that, there are workarounds, which is partly what I'm going to show you, but you do have to acknowledge it's not as free. So if you're going to incorporate an image, I would suggest giving it its own cell in a table. And so let's say we have this and we wanted to include an image here on the right. Excuse me. And to do that, so I'm going to right click into my table and I'm going to say insert column right. Okay. I have 4 rows. I want one single cell. And so I'm going to highlight them all and I'm going to click and I'm going to say merge cells. Okay. One thing it does do, I will tell you, is that it turned yellow because the first row of the cells I asked it to merge was yellow because it was a heading row, and so that's easily fixed. We just go back up to our paint can and we say transparent, and now it's back. All right, so just insert a plain old image. Nothing fancy. You can do that any number of ways, right? You can go to Google, do a search on Google, and all of that, or you could upload a picture or whatever. So I'm going to go to insert and I'm going to go to image. You've got a bunch of options. You can copy and paste a picture, like I said. If you want to just do it straight through the doc, that's an option. I do that a lot if I'm looking for a more generic picture, just for a visual. I'm not looking for anything specific. So if you go to search the web, it brings up this sidebar and you search for images. I'm going to search for beach because it's summer and I am thinking about that. All right, so I'm just going to select an image and I'm going to click insert. Perhaps. There we go. Click insert. All right, and there it is. Beautiful, popped in, window closed itself. That's all well and good. You will notice that because the image is longer than the table I had before, it automatically put this row longer. And personally, for me, I don't like how these 2 rows are one size and this one is larger. I would like them to be equal. And so if that ever happens to you and you're like me and you want it to be a little more, again, you want it to be more equal, you would just highlight all 3 and right click and you would click distribute rows. And so what that's going to do is it's going to make all 3 of these rows exactly the same size. It's going to distribute them through the space. So they're all the same size. You can also do that, by the way, with columns. Like let's say you want these 2 columns to be the same size. If you noticed when we inserted this column on the right, it pushed everything left, which meant it squished this one more. Let's say you want them to be more even. You can highlight both of these columns, right click and say just distribute columns. And now they're evenly sized. And of course you say, oh, it's too much. Okay. So anyway, just so you know, it's always customizable in terms of the sizing. One of the other things I personally prefer, because if I were to push this out to students, I just don't like the look of this table border around my picture. So I would change the border color of these 3 sides. So to do that, you select, and if you want to select multiple sides, you press Control, right? You got to wait. You notice I have the moving cursor, I have the typing cursor. You got to wait for this table resize cursor, whatever the heck that icon is. You got to look for it. You got to kind of move your mouse and wait for it. I'm holding down Control. That is how, come on. Okay, or not. That is how I am selecting multiple lines at once. I'm still holding down Control this whole time. Even though you merge cells, notice it makes you select, because I have 4 rows, it made me select each side of the row separately. It's a little annoying in that respect. But anyway, now I have all 3 sides of the picture highlighted, and I'm just going to go to border color, and I'm going to select white. And so now the picture is there all by itself. But again, let's say you don't want just an image. You want to add a text box. You want to emphasize something. And so to do that, I'm going to delete this for right now. But to do the extra things on top of a picture, the captions and the arrows and the circling and any kind of other emphasis, you need to insert a drawing. And so I deleted that image for now. Notice that it's white. The borders are white, so it's hard to kind of tell, but it is still here, and you can see my cursor's there, and you can see this pops up. That kind of tells you you're inside a table, that little down arrow. If you highlight, you can also tell I'm still there. It's still there. So anyway, I'm going to put my cursor in it. I'm going to go to Insert Drawing this time. If you're familiar with drawings, you might have created some already, and you can always insert that. For this purpose, though, I'm going to create a new drawing, and that's going to bring up this inset box. All right, so same thing. I've got all these options. I'm going to go to Images. Again, you can copy and paste an image in, whatever it is you want to do. You have all of these other options like before. I'm just going to go to Search, and I'm going to, again, search for beach, and I'm going to look for my beach picture. And here's the same one I had before. Select it, and it puts it into the box for you. Okay, but again, you can copy and paste a picture. You can insert it if you have a file. It doesn't have to do it that way. All right, but let's say I want to emphasize something. So I'm going to go to Shapes. I've got all these options now. I'm going to go up to Shapes. I'm going to circle. Like, as I often do this myself as a social studies teacher, I'll circle maps or particular parts of images I want students to focus on. The default is this blue circle, so you just got to start changing things. You got to go to fill color. I like to make them transparent so I can see the background. I really just wanted a circle to kind of like highlight something. You can change the border weight so that it stands out a little bit better. It's not just like the thin little black line. I often, because I really want to draw students' attention, I'll also often change it to this very bright, almost obnoxious red. And so that'll, now I've got my circle on, to really emphasize that part. And let's say I wanted to add a text box. So I'm just going to add, I draw the text box. I say, type what I want. I wish I were here. All right. In drawings, the font, I'd say it's a little small. In drawings, word of warning, the font size alone, like the number, doesn't really matter. What matters is the proportion of the text to the rest. And so size 14 is a relatively big text, but in this case, because the drawing is so much bigger, I'm going to make it 24. There, right now it stands up a little bit more. I'm going to make it bold because I, again, really want it to kind of be emphasized. And the black kind of blends in a little with the sand behind it. And so I'm going to go back up to my trusty paint can, and I'm just going to choose this very light gray to really kind of make sure that it's sewn. I mean, you can do all sorts of other things. You can change the border of it. You can put a border color, whatever you want to do. Here you have your options, and so I clicked this down arrow next to it, and I'm going to click arrow. All right, so I want to really say, I wish I were here, right? And it gives me a nice little tiny black arrow, but I'm not interested in subtlety, so I'm really going to emphasize and force it to stand out. So now I've got my text box, circle, an arrow pointing to it. I really wish I was right there, and I'm going to click Save and Close. Okay. And so it, again, because my cursor was there, the drawing is popped right into where I had my cursor. Drawings, you might be able to see this, I'm not sure. Drawings usually come out blurrier. A drawing is almost always lower quality than an actual image, but for the purposes of simply highlighting or emphasizing certain parts, I think it works out absolutely well. In a more academic sense, if we go back to if you remember on my first video, I showed you this imperialism in China background reading, right? So if we go back to that, scroll all the way down to the last page, here is an example of what I was showing you, but again, it's a bit more academic. This is a political cartoon, 1792, or an illustration from 1792. This is a drawing itself. So here is this is the picture and the caption. Right, it's in its own box. Notice, so this is a table again. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 row table with 2 columns. Okay, I merged the cells on the right-hand column and put the image and its caption in there. And then over on the left, I have the question and answer, and question and answer, and question and answer. So this is, gives you an example of a way I used it in the classroom where students are expected to look at and examine and analyze the cartoon.